everyone reports a very large, very muscular black cat. It's got black fur and a long tail. About half of those reports say this creature is of extraordinary size. By that I mean 4 to 5 feet tall at the shoulder and weighing anywhere from 900 to 1,300 pounds. My name is James Szubski. About 3.5 years ago, my wife and I inherited Margie's outdoor store right here in the Columbia River Gorge. Not long after we took over, people started coming in and telling us all kinds of strange stories about encounters they were having in the wild reaches around the store. Since then, we've started a paranormal reporting program, and we now have over 360 reports. Everything from Bigfoot to UFOs, to portals, to small humanoids. And what really fascinates me is a creature we call the clickatat ape cat. It's an enormous black panther creature, and we have at least 120 reports of that alone. Behind me is the Gorge Paranormal Info Center, where we take a lot of the reports that we get, the eyewitness reports, and we map them on our big map, and we describe some of the phenomenon here. There are so many ordinary people that have extraordinary experiences, but they're afraid to talk about it because they're worried people will think that they're crazy, or that they'll have some kind of negative impacts in their career. And it makes sense. I mean, we've had senior law enforcement officials come and report strange occurrences. We've had local leaders. And so what we did was we created a safe place where people could talk about their extraordinary experiences and know that they'd be taken seriously. We get a wide range of reports. Some of the more interesting ones are things having to do with portals. Just about 25 miles north of us is Mount Adams. So that was famously part of the Kenneth Arnold UFO sightings back in 1947. But today, people come from all over the world and watch UFOs fly around the mountain. Now, we've had some folks who have photographed, they videotaped what appears to be a glowing pyramid-like shape sort of at the base of that mountain. Some of our friends are remote viewers, and with over 50 remote viewers, they are getting reports that this is some kind of portal or Stargate is what they're picking up. Now, we don't know if that's true, but there's certainly an astonishing array of phenomena occurring around that mountain. We've also had stories of small humanoids. One of my employees actually was driving home late at night, around 2 o'clock in the morning, and they passed by a creature no taller than the hood of their car. It was thin and spindly, light-colored skin, and he described it as having a head that looked something like a praying mantis. Right as he passed it, his cell phone started, all the alarms and bells started going off, and the center console of his car went dark. A couple hundred yards down the road, he started feeling nauseous and uneasy. He never went back to investigate it, but it certainly was one of the more strange reports that we've had. Now, this clickatat ape cat, that's a whole nother set of strange reports. We've, like I said, have close to 130 reports, between 130, 120, 130, and everyone reports a very large, very muscular black cat. It's got black fur and a long tail. About half of those reports say this creature is of extraordinary size. By that I mean 4 to 5 feet tall at the shoulder and weighing anywhere from 900 to 1,300 pounds. And then a smaller set, maybe less than 10%, describe the creature as having a face that looks something like a monkey. By that they mean that there's no fur on the face, it's leathery and dark. It's got intelligent ape-like eyes and a somewhat shorter snout than you'd expect to see on a cat. Now, it remains a mystery. We do not know what this thing is. These variants in the reports, we may be dealing with multiple creatures, we may be dealing with something that's shape-shifting. We really don't know. Interestingly, there was a creature that lived here in Washington State alongside human beings during the Ice Age. It's said to have gone extinct 10,000 years ago. It's known as the Panthera atrox, or the American lion. And its fossils match the size and weight of the creature that's being reported here. And most interestingly, this is an animal that was sexually dimorphic, which means the males were much bigger than the females. So in any given population, you would expect half of the reports to be of extremely large size and the rest of them to be at sort of a normal size. Again, we don't know if that's what this creature is that people are seeing, but we certainly know that it may be one lead that explains what's going on out here. I've been fascinated with why so many people are reporting unusual experiences here in the gorge. And there's a couple of theories that we started to chase down. One is that the gorge is one of the most electromagnetically unique environments in the world. The river has been here for 25 million years. But about 17 million years ago, an enormous fissure opened in the earth at the Washington-Idaho border. And enormous volumes of lava spilled out of this fissure. And it flowed down the ancient, gentle Columbia River Valley, filling it up 300 miles all the way to the Pacific Ocean. If you took all the lava that erupted out of this thing and you spread it out evenly over the whole United States, it would bury the lower 48 states in 60 feet of lava. They estimate 300 different eruptive events. Some of them were separated by thousands of years. And so we've got this unique layer structure. When you are in the gorge, you can see that there are these tall cliffs and they seem to have these layers like a layer cake. What's interesting is that each one of those layers has a unique magnetic signature. What that means is, so as the lava flowed and it cooled, all of its magnetic material, all of its iron, oriented towards the Earth's North Pole at that time. Well, the Earth's North Pole is always wandering. In the last 100 years, it's wandered 700 miles. So when that next lava flow came on top of it, its magnetic material oriented towards the new North Pole, which means we've got these stacks of rock, each of them with a unique magnetic signature. There's a number of other factors here. We've got these volcanoes here. Within 35 miles of the store, there are 3 stratovolcanoes over 10,000 feet. And they pushed all those layers and buckled them in strange and unusual ways. And so what's happening is, when you look at the government-issued navigational maps of the gorge, there are bright pink letters on them, all warning that your magnetic compass readings will be off when you're in this area. It's a known and well-established part of the science of the geomagnetism here. Now, back in the late 80s, early 90s, up in Ontario, Canada, a doctor by the name of Michael Persinger, out of Laurentide University, was doing studies on how magnetic fields affect the human brain. It turns out that what he did was he created a helmet that he could manipulate magnetic signals. And he found that he could replicate paranormal-like experiences in his subjects. Most often, folks would report a sensed presence, like there was something else in the room with them. And about 3 of his subjects reported actually meeting God while they were having these magnetic fields manipulated around their head. In the media, it became known as the God helmet because of those folks. But he was also able to do things like turn fear on and off like a switch. The way that this works, though, has been recently discovered. It turns out that there are magnetite crystals in the human brain. These are naturally occurring, and they exist in what's called magnesomes. These are sheath-like structures that stack up the magnetite crystals, and they lay alongside brain cells, mostly in the hippocampus and temporal lobes. And when they encounter magnetic fields, they torque and exert an influence on the brain cells. It's believed this is how animals can navigate over long distances with a magnetosense, but humans have it as well. And it may be that when you're in the gorge, you are being exposed to unusual magnetic fields. We're still geologically active here, so there's great tectonic stresses. There's other things like solar wind that's coming in and affecting the Earth's magnetosphere. And what I think is happening is that people's electromagnetic tuners are getting adjusted unconsciously. So if you think about like a radio station, and if your radio station was always tuned to talk radio, you would think that that is what reality is. But if someone came in and slightly adjusted your electromagnetic receiver, you might suddenly not hear talk radio. You might hear classical music or country music or rock and roll music. Those signals are always present in the environment. It's just that you're not tuned to be receiving them. And so what may be happening out here is something akin to that. Now, a fair argument would be, are people having local hallucinations, something just that's happening in their own brain. And that would be a good theory. The problem is that we have physical evidence. We've got some photographs that people have taken. I've taken some myself of UFOs, glowing orbs, other types of creatures. We also have physical evidence like footprints and hair samples like here on the wall. And then we have incidences where there are multiple people reporting the same phenomenon at the same time. And so you wouldn't expect a hallucination to impact 8 different brains similarly at the same time. If there are phenomena that are occurring, it may be that a combination of our tuning changing and the tuning of the actual phenomena changing as well, and there's an intersection where it's happening. And it seems like it's happening a lot here in the gorge, almost more than anywhere else in the world. Sasquatch sightings are incredibly common here in the Columbia River Gorge. In fact, when my wife and I first started running the store, we were kind of stunned to find out that it seemed like everyone who lived here either knew someone who had a Sasquatch experience or had had one themselves. There's a gentleman who's brought in these hair samples here who has seen dozens of them on his property. He's seen them pregnant, he's heard them giving birth. At one evening, he claims to have seen 13 of them on his property, sort of lined up to cross the road. And so there's a vast history. In fact, Skamania County, which is the next county over here in the gorge, was the first governmental body in the world to enact Bigfoot protection legislation. And if you shoot and kill a Sasquatch in Skamania County and the coroner determines that it is a humanoid, you'll be charged with manslaughter. And so that happened way back in 1968. So this place is just cram-packed with those kind of sightings. There's an area, probably 20 miles northwest of here. It's the Monte Cristo Natural Preserve. That's what it's called on the maps, but all the locals just call it Monster Mountain because there have been so many Sasquatch sightings in this area. Interestingly, many of these Sasquatch sightings are often associated with the phenomenon of glowing orbs. And we've had reports of people seeing glowing orbs and then that experience quickly transforming into a Sasquatch sighting. And then other instances where we've heard vocalizations reported, and then glowing orbs are seen in that same area. Now, I can't say with certainty that these two phenomena are related, but they certainly seem to coincide with each other many, many times. I've lived in Washington State since I was deployed to Fort Lewis, north of here. And I was 19 when I got deployed there, so that was way back in the late 80s, at the end of the Cold War. And one of the things that happened, soldiers are always telling each other stories. And I remember a lot of the older soldiers talking about when Mount St. Helens erupted in 1980, how they were sent on a special security detail to go guard some of the encampments that were dealing with rescue operations and cleanup operations. A lot of animals perished during the volcanic eruption, and so they were cleaning up those carcasses and doing things like that. Now, some of these soldiers, and again, these are rumors, soldiers tell each other stories all the time, but some of these soldiers talked about being on a security detail where there were mounds of Sasquatch carcasses, and that they were sent on these details, that they hopped in these trucks and went to a number of different caves around Mount St. Helens, and sort of a leader figure of that Sasquatch tribe would hop out of the back of the truck and holler into the caves, and they would pull out either dead bodies or very badly burned bodies. It seemed like there was, in the stories, some type of scientist person, lab coat type of person, who's able to communicate with these Sasquatch. Now, when I was 19, I was like, cool story, bro, whatever. You don't want to get fooled. I mean, I've been sent off to look for a box of grid squares for the map or squelch for the radio, so I was thinking that this was another prank. But since I've been down here and I've been listening to the reports, there's a couple of more data points that make me believe those stories may be true. The first, of course, is published in 1975 by the Army Corps of Engineers, a thing called the Washington Environmental Atlas. And I think it's on page 57. It goes through all the different creatures that live in Washington State, all the different plants, all the different geology, but it specifically lists Sasquatch as one of the creatures that lives here in Washington State. And there are maps that depict its known habitat areas. And some of those are some of the hot spots we get reported on here in the gorge. Others are up in the Mount St. Helens area. And that's 5 years before the mountain blew. Also in 2007, I've seen a map from the Air Force, so east of us in Spokane is a Fairchild Air Force Base, and they've got a school there, so when a pilot gets down, they train them how to escape and evade and get back to friendly territory. And they issue the trainees a map, and it's a map of Washington State, and this map also lists all the creatures that live in Washington State. And in the section that lists the dangerous creatures, of course, we've got our bears, and we've got our cougars and our rattlesnakes, but there's also an entry for Sasquatch. And this is an official government training document. And I've had many of these, and I've never known one to joke around. So again, I can't say anything for sure. I don't have any firsthand knowledge of it, but it sure seems like the government is aware that these creatures exist out here, and they've known for many, many decades. So here's our map of the Columbia River Gorge. And we've got a whole host of different phenomena that occur out here. We've got reports of strange creatures, mutant creatures in Stevenson, but also all over. Many reports of soldiers in the forest stopping people from entering public lands. They claim to be soldiers. Oftentimes, they look more like paramilitary guys. Sometimes you get guys with rifles saying they're from the power company and they won't let you into a certain area. We've got missing folks, especially up here in some of our lava beds like Broke Leg Barrows. Down by Beacon Rock, we've got reports of ghostly apparitions at the trailheads. I myself have seen some of these glowing orb type structures over here by the Spring Creek Hatchery. Of course, you got Mount Adams up there. There are stories of UFO bases inside the mountain. Monster Mountain right here, where we've got tons of UFO sightings, Bigfoot sightings. UFOs, a lot of that happening in Hood River, also in the Dalles. We've got reports of the Klickitat ape cat pretty much all throughout the region, in the Klickitat Canyon and in some of these scrubbier areas up here. Here is where we've got the channeled scablands of Horse Thief Butte and Horse Thief Lake area. Petroglyphs on the walls there seem to indicate that Klickitat ape cat may have been here for millennia. Strange little humanoids occurring here in the desert areas. And then when you get way to the east, we've got a life-size replica of Stonehenge. Of course, upriver is the Hanford nuclear site, where they had the animal testing laboratory, where we have historically confirmed that they were experimenting on apex predators, and those experimental apex predators escaped into the wild, and they were unable to recapture them. So, and then of course in the Dalles, many, many ghost stories. So the whole range of things is really quite extensive, and it's kind of like a Disneyland of paranormal activity out here, and just a huge mystery as to why exactly that's going on. The gorge is really a great place to come. I can guarantee you that you are going to have some kind of magical experience here. The reason why I say that is the place is just jaw-droppingly beautiful. If you come out here though, and you head into some of our desert areas, like the area around Horse Thief Lake and Horse Thief Butte, there seems to be a lot of activity there. Anytime you get close to our volcanoes like Mount Adams, Mount Hood, or Mount St. Helens, we get a lot of reports in those areas. And then many times deep in the wilderness. Obviously, the best place to stop is here at Margie's Outdoor Store. We've got maps, we've got some guides, and we love talking to folks about this stuff, and we can give you pointers on where some of the more recent sightings have occurred.